Before I get into talking about comprehensive food safety systems, what I want to start is just, I don't know if a lot of you are familiar with what JBS is and the industry that we cover and the different proteins that we cover. So I have just a few slides to kind of talk about a little bit of who we are and what we do. So we are a company from 1950s in Brazil, and we are the leading protein producer of the world. So our net revenue, this is accumulated over the last 9 months from 2012, about $26.9 billion. Our EBITDA runs about $1.6 billion, accumulated over those same 9 months of 2012. Worldwide, we have about 140,000 employees. We do have 307 production units on 5 continents. Where we reach, we do have global reach. I won't list all those countries there, but we do touch a lot of areas of the world. So we do find ways to keep ourselves busy. JBS USA, that's the headquarters in Greeley, Colorado. We started in the U.S. market in 2007. We are the leading producer of beef, pork, lamb, and poultry. In addition to that, we also are the largest cattle feeder in the world. Our Five Rivers is our cattle feeding division. We provide products to customers in over 60 countries on 5 continents. So JBS USA, we got about 73,000 people at 95 facilities in those 48 states, Australia, Canada, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. So getting into like I mentioned, we're beef, poultry, and pork as well. So on the beef side, we got 9 processing facilities here in the U.S. In Australia, we do have 10 beef plants. Canada, just recently with the acquisition of the XL Foods, we have a plant up there. It's about 16,000 employees with a daily capacity of just over 35,000 head that we can process. We have about 22% market share on the beef side, and we're going to procure cattle from Canada, Mexico, and then, of course, here in the U.S. On the pork side, we have 3 plants and 2 case-ready facilities, and 1 lamb plant located in Greeley, Colorado. So the slaughter locations that we have for the pork facilities in Worthington, Minnesota, Marshalltown, Iowa, and of course Louisville, Kentucky here, we have a facility, and then like I mentioned, the lamb plant in Greeley, Colorado. We do have a couple case-ready facilities in Muskegon, Michigan, as well as in Santa Fe Springs, California, that we produce case-ready for. We have about 50,000 head per day operating capacity on the pork side. We are the 3rd largest fresh pork producer, 2nd largest lamb producer, and then we have about 12% market share for pork. Pilgrims is our poultry division. As listed there, we got 29 fresh processing plants, 8 prepared foods, and cooked plants. We employ about 38,000 people on the poultry side. We have 3,900 contract growers and 36 million birds per week is what our operating capacity is, and that equals about 95 billion pounds of live chicken per year. So we do produce a lot of chicken, and around Super Bowl time, we're everybody's best friend. So overview for my presentation. Like I mentioned, we're going to talk primarily about a comprehensive food safety system and why that system is important. We're going to talk a little bit about the perspective on for USDA, both on the live side. I do have listed there. We're going to talk a little bit about the further processing. It is part of that system. However, I'm not going to put too much focus into that today. I'm going to go through what the packers are doing. So we obviously have systems in place today, but I think it's important. I won't go into massive detail about it. If you guys had listened to, I did a talk yesterday that went into more detail of the things that we do primarily on the slaughter side. But we're going to go and just cover that for a review. And then additional food safety efforts. What is it that needs to be done? Again, the examples that I'm going to use, it's not an exhaustive list. However, I think it's something that some ideas that we need to get out there of things that we can be talking about and how we need to move forward with those things. Got a couple concluding points, and then that'll be it. So it's hard to believe, but not everybody loves the meat industry. And that can be challenging, and if you guys aren't sure exactly what that picture is, that is people wrapped up in meat containers. And this is outside of our Louisville plant over here. Why they feel the need that they want to do that to prove their point, I'm not sure. I don't spend a lot of time dressed up like granola bars sitting in front of their corporate offices, but that's beside the point. So, animal agriculture has its fair share of external challenges. However, for those 300 million Americans that do buy our products, we owe them the reassurance that we're feeding their families with the safest products possible. And that's really what I want to get to today, is that we have a big responsibility when it comes to food safety and the things that we need to get to. So I think it's obvious that we can all agree that food safety must happen from farm to fork. It's a term that we use a lot. I don't know if you want to say it's overused, but it is a term that I think that we can all agree on. You got your producers through the packers, JBS, other packers out there, as well as consumers and further processors and so forth. So I think where the challenge comes in is that although we all agree that there's a need for food safety, each segment of the industry has a slightly different shade when it comes to what those responsibilities need to be. Again, I think we can get past those, but I think that right now we kind of operate in our segments, and there's some difficulty and challenges when it comes to of identifying who needs to do what within those segments. So if you operate in one of these segments and you ask yourself the question, am I responsible for food safety? Well, the easy answer for me is yes. As a general rule of thumb, in my opinion, if you make money in the meat protein industry, then you have responsibility in the area of food safety. Everybody has to do their part in order for it to work well. I think that there's probably a little differencing of who has to do what, but I think at the end of the day, it's a comprehensive system that we need to eventually get to. So in reality, many of us can't handle the truth that we are not doing enough to control pathogens through the meat protein system. I think we like to think we are, but, and this is packers included, that there's times when we just simply don't do enough when it comes to food safety because we know that organisms are still getting through the system. On the beef side, we're still having positives. We still get organisms that go through on the pork and poultry sides. And it's a difficult challenge. And sometimes we say, and I hear this 1,000 times from the packing guys, is that, how many more interventions can I put in a packing house? Or how many more cabinets can I spray? And basically the response is, well, as soon as you stop having positives, then we're going to stop putting in cabinets. But at the end of the day, again, I think that we can never do too much in order to control food safety. And I also get the fact that, we're here it's a business, and we're here to make profits, and we need to do that, but we need to do it in such a way that it's going to be beneficial for that entire system. So I hear this a lot too. Here's a model. So you have a lot of, we source a lot of cattle from different producers. We source a lot of pigs from different producers. Source a lot of chickens from different producers. And they all come into JBS, and this could be any packer. And we process that product, and then we sell it off to a lot of retailers and a lot of distributors and further processors and quick serve restaurants and food service. So at the end of the day, packer, you're the funnel. You should have systems in place to control those pathogens. Don't disagree. I think that packers need to play their part. But pathogens are still getting through the system. And that's a challenging task for us. If you look at, this is Dr. Scallon, when she was with the CDC, she did a fairly recent report in 2010, 2011, with the estimated illnesses, hospitalizations, and deaths from, I just highlighted these 5 organism groups: Campylobacter, the S-Tex, E. coli 157, the non-O157s, which are the new top 6 adulterants, Listeria pathogens, and Salmonella. So if you follow them across, if you look at Campylobacter, you're looking at 8,400 hospitalizations per year and 76 deaths. The S-Tex, you're looking at about 2,300 hospitalizations. 20 people die each year from it. Listeria pathogens, 1,400 and 250 deaths. Salmonella, over 19,000 people are hospitalized for salmonella each year, and 378 people die from it. So they're getting through the system. And of course, these estimations are not just focusing on the protein sector. However, we're a part of this. These are organisms that are inherent to our business, and we have to understand them, and we have to make sure that we're minimizing the risk of those systems. So what is the potential for systems that are overwhelmed? Well, we just saw this model, and again, JBS is the funnel, as an example. But what happens if JBS goes away? If we have a problem in our plants and we can't operate, or if we're shut down, well, the challenge becomes is then we don't have the ability to sell to the retailers, and we don't have the ability to sell to the distributors and the further processors and so forth. And if we can't sell our products, then we have a difficult time procuring our cattle and procuring our pigs and our chickens. And that's a difficult situation for everybody. And you ask yourself the question, well, that's a theoretical model, but can it happen? And we have a pretty close example of that in the XL Foods. XL Foods, if you're not familiar with it, had Canada's largest recall in history. The CFIA, which is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, came in and they pulled their license to operate at the end of September of last year for good. I mean, that plant stopped. It closed. It could not reopen. JBS came in and began operating it October 29th of last year, just under managing the operating systems with the intent to buy if need be. We took over ownership on January 14th. We came in, implemented our systems, and thankfully they're working pretty well. We're able to clean up a lot of things. We implemented new processes. But that was devastating. I mean, that was a very difficult situation. And so between then and now, I've been able to go up and do a lot of discussions about food safety programs and how to implement systems up in Canada. So, and I was at a conference with the Alberta Livestock and Meat Agency. And they asked us the question, we're sitting on a panel, and they asked us the question, and they said, so, what keeps you up at night? And my response was, well, I think we need to get past, producers saying it's the packer's responsibility, and the packer saying it's the producer's responsibility, and the food processor saying it's the processor or the producer's responsibility. And we need to come together, and we need to have a comprehensive food safety system in order to get through this. And they asked the veterinarian that worked for the Alberta Livestock, and she said, the fear of having another plant closure like Excel Foods. So it's a reality that's out there. Granted, the dynamics in the industry between the Canadian market and the U.S. market is slightly different, but it's something that can happen, and it's a reality that we need to recognize as we move forward and progress into the future. So, gee, John, thanks for the pep talk, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. The good news is that when we all play our part, we can get our desired results and control the organisms that are affecting our business. So, where do we start? Well, producers, and these are just some general things that I put down on paper, and it's really a guideline of where we need to get to. You have things like your feed additives and your vaccines. Packers, we have hide treatments, carcass sprays, subprimal sprays, trim treatments, cold chain. These are all things that we have in place today, but we can continuously optimize those systems. Further processors, if you're going to bring in subprimals and you're going to fabricate those subprimals and you're going to generate bench trim and you want them to go into your ground beef, that's fine, but you got to be able to reduce the potential pathogens of that. Cold chain, age specs. Let's not age our product for 6 months and then expect that we're going to trim it up and put it into ground beef. It's just not good practices to have happen. Grinders, trim treatment. You got a lot of product coming in. Everybody loves to eat hamburgers, but you got to make sure that you just don't bring it into your facility, grind it up without having some type of antimicrobial application in place. Retailers, you have your responsibility too. So subprimal sprays. If you're going to bring in steaks and you're going to needle tenderize them in the back room, well, you need to treat them with something in order to prevent any type of surface contamination from getting into the middle of that product. Transporters. You guys take the product from where it starts to where it needs to be, and we got to keep that cold chain up. Once you get it down to the temperature that deters microbial growth, we need to keep it there until it gets into the consumer's hands. So, these are systems, and I think today we have some applications in place. It's probably a little bit scattered, but I think what we really need to do is find out what that's going to look like, and really what are those strategies to get from the producer through the transportation and then into the consumer in a way that's going to really help control these organisms. I don't disagree. I've heard the argument that consumers play a part of it, and I totally agree. This talk isn't really focusing on the consumer, but I think in fairness to them, they deserve to go to the store and buy a product that they can feel is safe to feed their families. So what does the USDA think? The packers are regulated. We have a lot of stuff that we have to go through that the government requires us to do, and that's fine. But when we start talking about the other entities, the producers and the further processors, here's an excerpt from this is a guideline, a pre-harvest management control guideline, and don't spend a lot of time trying to find it. It's not very good. But at the end of the day, this is really the perception that USDA has, is that, and I'll read the highlighted area here. The Food Safety Inspection Service recommends that slaughter establishments receive their cattle from beef producers that implement one or more documented pre-harvest management practices to reduce fecal shedding. FSIS encourages pre-harvest interventions as the first control step in an integrated beef products safety system. So their head's at, you need to start with the producer. And I can't disagree with them. However, the challenge is what should that be? And I think that's where the investigation of new technologies really needs to come from, is what are those things that we can be looking at that the producers can do? Because a packer doesn't want to tell a producer to do something that is going to incur more costs that isn't effective. The FSIS doesn't have any regulation or jurisdiction over the producers. So what they're going to do is they're going to come to the packer and they're going to say, we think that you guys should be procuring cattle from people that do these things. And we say, we don't do that. And they're going to ask, well, how come? And if we don't have a good answer, they're going to say, your HACCP plan's inadequate. And we're not there yet, but we're getting to that point. So we need to get in front of that train such that we don't get to the spot where they're pushing us into doing something that is ineffective and again, is simply adding cost into the system. That was for beef. Salmonella and Campylobacter, it's not that different for poultry. Again, I'll read the highlighted areas I have here. FSIS encourages plants to reduce levels of Salmonella and Campylobacter. That's great. Carcasses during poultry slaughter operations using the best management practices outlined in this guideline. I haven't thoroughly read through this poultry guideline, but I can't imagine it's any better than the beef one. But again, that's not the important part. It's the interventions suggested cannot overcome poor pre-harvest production practices. Again, their head is at by the producer. They're saying you got to have good pre-harvest practices in order to start that food safety process. Plants should use this guideline to improve management practices. When a plant makes changes at the appropriate locations, process control should improve. So the appropriate location, well, they're assuming it's going to start on the pre-harvest side. Again, I think that there's things that we can do that's going to complement the things that we do in the plants. Just one quick slide on further processing. Basically, if you look at, as it stated there, this is the Directive 10,010.1. This is basically the Bible when it comes to E. coli in the processing plants. I'm just going to go through the highlighted area. In the past, there used to be, the argument was, I buy a product, it's got the mark of inspection on it, so I should be good to go. The challenge is I'll start reading in the red, the mark of inspection is a reflection of a finding made by FSIS personnel that the establishment has followed the validated procedures in its HACCP plan. Not that the pathogen has been eliminated or reduced to undetectable levels. So that's the challenge that we have to do for further processors is you have to reduce that organism to below detectable levels. You can't use the mark of inspection anymore. So going on to B there, if the IPP or the inspector at the plant finds an establishment's only conclusion regarding control of the pathogen is a determination that E. coli is not reasonably likely to occur in its operation because the product that it receives bears the mark of inspection. Going further down, the EIAO or the compliance officer is going to conduct an FSA, which is a food safety assessment, on whether an enforcement action such as an NOIE, which is the Notice of Intended Enforcement, is basically saying if you don't get your stuff together, we're going to suspend your plant, is warranted because the HACCP plan is inadequate. So basically what they're saying is you have to do something other than buy product that has the mark of inspection on there in order to control the pathogen. So again, if you're looking at, the packers are regulated, so we kind of got the perception of what they're looking at on the live side. We know that they're going further downstream and saying you got to do more from a further processing standpoint. So, the goal is to not have them force us into what that comprehensive system looks like, but let us determine what that system looks like. So where do we start? I want to spend the next few minutes here just talking about the intervention systems that we have in place on the poultry side, the pork side, and on the beef side. Again, if you were in my talk yesterday, I went into a little bit more detail. I'm not going to go into the same level of detail because I don't think that's necessarily important, but it's really just about understanding kind of what the packers do already today. And then I have a few slides in the back here that's going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we can possibly do in the future. So this is an example of the flow chart from pork processing. Again, we utilize what we call the multiple hurdle approach. That's nothing more than saying that you have a series of interventions, one after the other, that you apply different types of antimicrobials. They're not additive in the sense that if you have a 2-log reduction here and you have a 3-log reduction here, your system will give you a 5-log reduction. But they're additive in the sense that you reduce a certain amount of bacteria with one intervention that's going to make the next intervention just that much more effective in reducing those pathogens. So on the pork side, live receiving, obviously pen cleaning is going to be something that's important. You got to have an environment that's not going to be cross-contaminating organisms. The singeing process, I think the pork guys kind of have it easy. As it said earlier, my primary focus is in the beef side. I think the pork guys have it easy because you basically singe the hide of the carcass. I mean, when you light something on fire, typically you're going to be able to kill a lot of the bacteria on the surface, which is a good thing. I'm not implying that's a bad thing, but that's just the reality of the process. However, through the dressing procedure, you still can contaminate certain areas. So the final wash, we do apply some acetic acid type antimicrobials. Lactic acid is a big antimicrobial that is used on the pork side. And then the spray chill. during the chilling process, that's where both on the beef and the pork, the carcass is going to spend the most amount of time in the plant. So because of that bacterial growth, there's time and temperature. What you want to do is you want to chill that down fast, and then you want to, if you can, add some type of antimicrobial in there. On the beef side, or the pork side, they use chlorinated water. I'll go through an example of not a new technology, but a newer technology that we're trying on the beef side. We do some generic E. coli sampling. It's a requirement. The Megareg tells us that we have to do this generic E. coli sampling. I have my opinion about it. I don't think it does us any good, but it's a regulation, so we have to do it. And then we do use subprimal sprays. We'll use different types of organic acids. Lactic acid is a big one again. Peroxyacetic acid is a big one. But that happens on the cut floor, so right before packaging is kind of that final system. So again, multiple hurdle approach, and you can see the examples that the pork side uses. I wish we could singe beef cattle, would be fantastic, but apparently we can't get that approved. So anyways, moving on to the poultry. Again, live receiving, focus on preventing cross-contamination. You need to make sure that those cages are clean, and then you do cage sanitation. Stunning, you get some fecal release out of that, and then the scalding process helps with the scald brushes and the multi-stage scalding tanks. Getting into the green bucket there, where you start talking about the intervention system. So defeathering, we're going to be using hot water and some chlorination techniques. The washing system, again, chlorine solutions, acidification, some peroxyacetic acids. Inside washing, we got high pressure, high volume. Washing applications, chlorinated water. You kind of get a feel that the poultry guys like to use a lot of chlorinated water, which is fine. Application of processing and chemical aids. Brush scrubbing, high volume, low pressure, antimicrobial solutions again, and then just the process of the scrubbing of the brushes helps to reduce those organisms. You get into the final washes where you're going to start using about 50 parts per million of free chlorine. 5% sodium bisulfate is another antimicrobial that is used. And then whether you do a finishing chiller or a post-chill spray, you're going to use maybe a short application of real high peroxyacetic acid concentrations, or up to 0.8% of the CPC that's there. So our chillers, we use multi-stage chillers, which again is getting that cold chain started. And then refrigeration, to get it below 40 degrees and keep it there, is really how you prevent the growth from coming up. On the beef side, the beef side is a little bit more complex for the simple fact that E. coli 157H7 and the new top 6 listed by the CDC for the non-O157s are adulterants, so we have to control that through the process. So we have the in-depth system that we have on the beef side is a little bit, again, more complex. We have something that we call, if you look in the black box up there, it's a little bit hard to read, but we call it our SAFE program. Basically, that just stands for Slaughter Actions for Excellence, and we focus in 3 main areas: the carcass dress, the microbial or the mechanical intervention system, and then the microbial monitoring of that system. Looking at the green box, it's a multiple hurdle approach, and I'll just walk through. You can see where they interject into the flow chart. But we start with hide decontamination. Not all of our plants use it. We haven't found a real great way to treat the hide yet. It's difficult. Most of the plants are just kind of makeshift cabinets with a bunch of hog nozzles that spray high volumes of water, and we'll shoot some chlorine in there if appropriate. Then we go into the previous wash. So after the hide's taken off, before the evisceration, the carcass is split, we'll treat it with hot water is an intervention that we like to use. The final washes. Today our system basically is we're going to be using a bromine technology that is in our bone wash, and then we'll go into a high volume hot water cabinet where we'll spray 1,200 gallons per minute, 200 degree intake water, where we try to get the surface of the carcass to be about 170 degrees for greater than 10 seconds. We found is a pretty good kill effect. And then some of our plants will give a mist of lactic acid prior to going into the coolers. Then of course our chill, again like the pork side, they're going to stay in the hot boxes the longest amount of time during the chilling process. So we want to make sure to get them chilled down nice and cold, and then we'll put a little antimicrobial spray in the spray chill systems. The challenge there becomes usually if it's effective enough to kill bugs, it's going to eat up your plant. So we need to find ways to get as much kill out of it without destroying all the concrete that you built your facilities on. So It's not going to happen overnight. I'll let my kids figure that one out. But we also use remote video auditing, RVA technology. What that is that we have cameras set up at various locations on the kill floor, and we can monitor all the critical jobs that are performed on that kill floor. And we don't audit every single one of them, but then we go back and we'll randomly take video from that and audit to make sure that the people are doing their job right. It's not a big brother, or it's not something that we use to penalize people for doing it incorrectly. What we use it as a behavioral change and a training tool. So if we identify someone not doing it right, we bring them in, we show them the video and say, hey, this is what you're doing wrong. We retrain them, we put them back out there, and we find that most people either one, just simply didn't know what to do, and that's not their fault, that's our fault for not training them right. Or two, they just made a mistake. So they made a mistake, and then they corrected it, and they move on. You do get the occasional person that just comes in and says, I don't want to do it. And we find them, and we get them out of the system. It's not easy to, or it's fairly easy to identify those. We utilize that, like I said, with the critical jobs, as well as we look for cuts, folds, and flaps. And a cut, fold, and flap is nothing more than when you dress that carcass and you make a cut that isn't supposed to be there, you can create a little flap on that carcass. Bacteria can get in the middle of that, and what that does is that it impedes the effectiveness of your intervention system. So you have to identify that, you got to cut it out. That way, if there's any bacteria there, once it goes through the hot water or goes through the antimicrobial applications, it can kill those bugs that got stuck in there. We do a harvest monitoring program. What that is that's taking microbial samples at various locations throughout the process. We try to make sure that you start off high, and then by the end of the system, you want to have a nice decrease of that. If the samples are indicating that you're going in the wrong direction, then you need to go back and investigate and figure out exactly why that's happening. Maybe it was an intervention application isn't being applied right, or your concentration was too low. There's a variety of things that can happen, but it's you trend that over time, and then if you see something that you can spark some investigation into. On the fab side, again, I mentioned that most of the food safety happens on the kill, but we do have some interventions on the fab side in beef. We do some harvest monitoring on that side where we take samples prior to and after the chilling system. There is going to be some growth in the coolers. We try to deter that as much as possible, but there'll be some growth, so we want to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. We do have a final lactic acid application going into the cold side, as well as we have subprimal sprays. So once the carcasses are fabricated and go down the tables, we have sprays that will spray from the top and bottom and try to treat as much of that antimicrobial as possible. Challenge there is you have to maintain that you don't get any weight gain, so it's very fast. And it's a little bit more difficult to treat cold product than it is to treat hot product. So you can't put a lot of product on there. You can't put a lot of antimicrobial product on there. So the effectiveness of it just isn't as good. So in a nutshell, that was basically the intervention systems that we implement on the poultry, the pork, and on the beef side. So that's what we're doing today. And if you remember back, I think the majority of the time it's working well. But there are times that the system's overwhelmed, and there are times that we just need to do more, and it needs to be part of that comprehensive food safety system. So some of the additional things I think that the packers can be looking at, and a lot of the JBS's competitors are looking at these same things. One thing that we say is that food safety is not a proprietary system that we have in place. So we have a lot of interaction between the JBSs and the Tysons and the Cargills, which is a good thing. We have reciprocal food safety tours. Well, I'll go to one of their plants and tour around and see what they do from a system, and they'll come to one of our plants and do the same thing. So I think that's beneficial because you really get the best practices that you can implement. And I think one of those best practices that came out of these tours was the idea of this bromine technology. And it's kind of similar to chlorination, but it's a little bit more effective with using a little different chemical. If there's any chemists in the room, you guys are going to shudder when you hear my explanation of how it works. You basically take the precursors of hyperbromous acid and you slam them together, and out pops an antimicrobial called hyperbromous acid that works very well on gram-negative organisms. So we started testing this in our bone wash system, which is the cabinet just prior to our final wash. And it works very well there. This is just some data, and I won't get too in depth, where you can see that you get a log difference of on the top one there, you get a log difference of almost 2 logs. The bottom one, you're seeing a log difference of almost 3 logs, which is very good. But even more importantly, if you look at that final number, the percent undetectable after treatment we're finding about 40% of our samples are undetectable. So that's a good thing. Like I mentioned, we use that in a carcass spray today. Other places we're investigating that is on the hide wash. Today I mentioned we talked about using chlorine primarily. We have shown some effectiveness in our cactus plant with regards to using it on the hide side, and we just started this week putting it in our spray chill. The challenge with bromine is that it eats up brass, and a lot of the spray headers in our chilling system is made out of brass, so again, there's a give and take when it comes to real robust antimicrobial systems because it does chew up your plant a little bit. The bacteriophage. Bacteriophage is really nothing more than a virus that's going to affect a bacteria. They're very specific, which is a good thing. But it can be a difficult process as well because unlike the intervention systems that I described, those are very generalistic. They're going to kill anything that it hits, lactic acid, hot water. Bacteriophage has to find the organism that it's targeted for. Today they have one for 0157, for Salmonella, and I believe they have one for Campylobacter, but I'm not positive. The one that we tried was on the beef side, so we put it in our plants for about 6 months just to see what kind of effect that we had. The phages work great. When you can get them in contact with an organism, they're going to work great. They basically infect that cell, they lyse it, and then the progeny then go out and infect other cells. And again, the benefit of having that is that they're very specific, and if they come into contact with the bacteria, then they're going to kill it. The challenge is getting it in contact with the bacteria. So one thing that we're doing now is we're trying to find the best application for that, because what we did is we had this deluge system where the cattle would come in and then we would just spray over the top of them. But you can't hit every single area, so the cattle would kind of bunch up in certain areas, and a lot of the GMs thought we were just, spending all this money and it was just going down the drain. So what we had to do was find ways of what's that best application going to be. So we're working with a company called Lanco that is helping us basically validate the system that we have. We're doing that in Tellison. The other challenge with bacteriophage is that it takes an activation time. So you have to spray it on the live animal, and it's got to sit for 45 minutes to an hour, and then it goes through the slaughter process. If you're in Phoenix, Arizona at our Tellison plant, hey, that's great. You can spray it all year round. If you're in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you're not going to be spraying live animals when it's 30 degrees below zero. So it's really an intervention that you can only use through the season, through the summer season, which is better than nothing. But it's a place that we can at least start. So I mentioned hide washes, the makeshift ones that we've put together. We see some reduction. There are bigger ones out there and better ones out there. We at JBS have not put a system in place yet. This is an example of Water Resource Management has one where it uses brushes. And even the big brush system, you don't get all the mud off. So if you have plants in locations throughout the country where you have not a lot of mud that accumulates on the hide, this can be a very good intervention to do. The challenge is that it's very expensive. And it does still require prep work, especially on the muddy cattle. So you're going to need a team of people that are going to be there trying to cut off the mud balls with brisket saws, or I've even heard people using chainsaws to try to cut that off. So it still becomes a challenge, and it does require a large footprint. You're not going to be able to go out and buy a system like this and drop it into any plant. You're going to have the space to do that. You're going to be knocking down walls. You're going to be building systems in order to put these in. So it's something that is going to take a lot of economic investment. But again, I think it's something that we need to continue to research to find out what is the added benefit of having that. So on the live side, the vaccine. There's probably been a lot of discussion that you guys know, and probably even more than I know about the vaccine. In Pilgrim's Pride, we have about 50% of our flocks vaccinated for Salmonella. We did do a test at Five Rivers for the E. coli vaccine. We used the SRP vaccine, which is just the description that I have up there. And the model that we use is we wanted to see the effect that it would have on the cattle, the fecal, the hides, and then on the trim. And going from the fecal to the hide was very easy. Going from the hide to the trim is the challenging part that we had for a couple reasons. The first one here I have mentioned is that we wanted to only use a single dose. So the Five Rivers guys didn't really like the idea of having to run your animals through a chute 3 times to give it 3 shots. It doesn't do real good logistically for their process. So what we said was, hey, all right, how about 1? Can we start with 1 and see how that works? So the last bullet point there, we talked about the averages across time of the hide results. So the controls, we found 23% positive for 0157. The vaccinated ones, we found only 10%. So just running the straight numbers, we got about a 50% reduction between the treated and the controls. The challenge that we had is that, although that's great information, The challenge that we had is we really wanted to know if you vaccinate an animal, what's it going to do to your trim? So just by way of background, when the majority of the sampling that we do for the adulterants and the beef side is for for E. coli 157, and it's in our trim. And our trim is nothing more than when you fabricate a carcass and it goes on the tables and you cut that subprimal into the specific size product that your customer wants, you have all these little pieces of trim that end up having to go somewhere. So they go into a 2,000-pound combo, and then those combos go to a grinder, and then they make all the hamburgers that we love to eat so much. So every one of those combos we test for 157. So in a big plant, we're going to test about 400 combos a day. And we want to know that if we vaccinated cattle on the live side, is it going to have an effect on whether I find E. coli in the trim? And unfortunately, we weren't able to determine that. We're not saying that it doesn't. We just didn't find any positives when we did the study, because what you had to do is you have to track that same lot of animals all the way through the system and then hope that you get a positive occurring downstream. And the days that we did it on, we just simply didn't find any positives. So the results were inconclusive with regards to whether that has an effect. Again, does have an effect on reduction of the hides. Just don't know today if that carries through the system or not. Direct-fed microbials. I think that the concept of direct-fed microbials works well. Some of the research that I did in the past was using lactic acid bacteria on ground beef, and it worked very well. And it actually coincides well with this, because I found that at very low doses you didn't find much of an antagonist effect, but at higher doses it did work. The challenge that we're having is that from a live side, the performance, and some of you probably know this already, the performance response is at about 6 logs for the product. However, the food safety performance is at about 10 to the 9 logs. So they're different levels. And then in addition, for JBS, it's challenging because the organism is not heat stable. And in a lot of our feed yards, when we make our hot flake, it kills the bugs. So what we're trying to find out now is that if we need to have it at 10 to the 9 logs, what do we need to dose it up to in order to go through our process such that we don't kill all the organisms but still maintain a level of protection? And we're working with NPC to try to figure out what that may be. So it's something that's still kind of in the works. But again, I think that this is some fairly promising technology from a cost effectiveness standpoint. Sodium chlorate. This is a compound that basically kills bacteria that has the enzyme nitrate reductase, but doesn't kill anything else, which is great. It does kill 157 and salmonella. It's going to kill the non-157s. However, FDA is not letting us use it, so it's held up somewhere. I don't know why. I haven't gotten a great explanation of why we can't begin these trials. I'll reach out to this group. If anybody can help us try to move this forward, I think it would be fantastic. I don't even know how expensive it's going to be, but I'm hoping that it won't be too much. In my mind, a live site intervention needs to be easy to use, inexpensive, so we can get market penetration for it. We got to get everybody to do it, and those are the challenges that we've had a lot with the vaccines and the direct-fed microbials. Is that we're not forcing people to do it. We want to make sure that everybody understands that they have some responsibility, so that we're hoping they'll work with us as far as from the packer standpoint. But it's what do you do when only a portion of your cattle come in treated? There are models out there that can predict some of that, but that's the challenging that we're working against. And at the end of the day, that's really the concept of this, is building that system. Whose responsibility is it, and how are we going to maintain everybody to do their part? So as I mentioned, a comprehensive food safety system is not going to be free. I didn't think it was important that I got up here and talked about how much money the packer spends on intervention systems. It's a lot, just so you know, it's a lot. But again, it's not something that we need to put focus on. We're in the business to make money. I'm not trying to imply that we're not doing that. But food safety is something that is important enough that we need to start investing some time and some dollars into. And I think collectively we need to start having these conversations on how to move forward. We're at the point now that we know that there's things out there that can work. They're maybe not totally refined yet, but we need to start having these conversations around them so we can get to that spot, because we owe it to our customers. I mean, we owe it to the people. At the end of the day, it's the consumers that eat our products, and it's consumers that we owe them safe product to purchase in the store. So again, am I responsible for food safety? Basically, the answer is yes. I make money selling product that eventually gets into the consumer's hands. Food safety is my responsibility. And at the end of the day, we are all in this together. Packers can't do it alone. Producers can't do it alone. Further processors can't do it alone. We have our own cogs, but we're all in the same machine. So.